All right, let's go over the chapter 2 CA test. Okay, it says plot -5. -5 is in the x, and then 3 in the y. So there's A. Plot B, which is -3 is 0. So there's B. C is at -2, 7. D is at 5, -3. And E is at -6, 1. And which quadrant is E in? Well, the quadrants, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4. So E is in quadrant 2. Okay. Number 4, it says graph this. Well, I can solve for y and get y equals, let's see, subtract 4x from both sides, so I get -3y equals -4x plus 12, and divide everything by -3, and I can get y equals -4 divided by -3 is 4/3 x, and that's -4. 12 divided by -3 is -4. So it goes through -4 and has a slope of up 4 over 3. But I could have also just found the x and y intercepts and graphed using that. And so if I have 4x minus 3y equals 12, I find the x-intercept by letting y be 0. If I let y be 0, I'm on this line, or let y be 0, I'm on this line. And so if y is 0, this part of the equation is 0, and I get 4x equals 12, divides both sides by 4, and I get x equals 3. X-intercept is 3, 0. If I find the y-intercept, I do that by letting x be 0. If I'm at x equals 0, I'm on the y-axis. So if I let x be 0, 0 times 4 is 0, and I get -3y equals 12. Divide both sides by -3, and I get y is -4. And that's what we found from this. So find the two intercepts would be an easier way to get the 2 points to draw this line through. So I've drawn the line, found the intercepts. It said graph y equals 7, typically different. Where are the y coordinates always 7? Well, this is x equals 7, but 7, 7, there's where y is 7. Also, 0, 7's y is 7, or 1, 7, or -4, 7, or any x number, 7 in the y would be a line that goes this way. And now if I want to be parallel to the original line, I want to have the same slope. I want to go up 4 over 3. So I'd have to have a line that goes y equals 4/3 times x. It just would not go through -4 anymore. It might go through a different place. To find that other place so that it hits at -3, 1, it would have to go up 4 over 3, so it would hit at 5. Or you could say y equals 4/3 times the x, a -3, plus something, we usually call it b, is supposed to come out to be 1. So if I write 4/3 times the x plus b is 1, I can multiply these, and I get -12 over 3, which is -4, plus something is supposed to be 1, and you can see that adding 4 to both sides, b would have to be 5, and so that's the equation. Now the easier way to do it is the slope, the 4 and the 3, came from that 4 and that 3. If I leave that part of the equation alone, 4x minus 3y, I can just figure out a new number at the end and make it go through -3, 1, and the new number here would be also another way to write the parallel equation. 4 times -3 is -12. -3 times 1 is -3, so I get -15. Here's another form of the equation of the line that's parallel. 8. Solve for x. So I'll add 5x to both sides, and I get 12x plus 2 equals 9. Subtract 2 from both sides. 12x equals 7. Divide by 12, and x equals 7/12. Here we need to distribute because it's 3 times, so we get 6 minus 15x equals 1 minus 10x. And I can either add 10x to both sides or add 15x to both sides. I'll add 10x to both sides, and I get 6 minus 5x equals 1. Subtract 6 from both sides. Minus 6, that'd be -5. Divide by -5, and I get x equal 1. A homeowner is cleaning carpets and needs to rent a carpet cleaner. Super Clean rents the cleaner for $25 plus $5 an hour. So what's the cost? C, it's equal to $25 plus X is the number of hours, and if it's $5 per hour, it's going to be $5 times the number of hours. 2 hours would be $10 plus the 25. 3 hours would be 15 plus the 25. And it said Super Clean, but in class I changed it to Lovely Clean. So Lovely Clean is $40, so the cost is going to be $40 plus $2, so it's much less per hour, times X. And it says determine the hours that the rental costs are the same amount. So we want to know when 25 plus 5x equals 40 plus 2x. So I can subtract 2x from both sides. Subtract 25 from both sides. And divide by 3. And x is 5, and 5 is the number of hours. Which company costs less for a small number of hours? Well, if it's a small number of hours, the price per hour is not going to make so much of a difference. It's going to be the upfront rental cost, which is 25 for Super Clean and 40 for Lovely Clean. So for a small number of hours, the more powerful term is not the one with the x, it's these, the constant, and so cheaper would be Super Clean. And it's because of less initial cost, less cost to start the rental. 10. Jorge drives to work 40 miles per hour, returns home at 35. Total driving time is 1.5. How far is it to work? Well, if we remember from our formula, if you go 60 miles per hour times 2 hours, you get 120 miles. So you get the speed times the time equals the distance. But we're talking about the total time, so that's the distance divided by the speed is time. So writing expression for time when it gets to work, if it's d miles away. So it would be d divided by the speed, which was 40. And that's an expression, not an equation. To return home the same number of miles, so it's going to be d divided by 35. And determine the distance to work. Well, this is the time going, this is the time returning, and those two total up to 1.5 hours. So d over 40 plus d over 35 is 1.5 or 3/2 hours. I can write 1.5 there too. Anyway, I need to multiply by something that'll cancel these out. And I could just do 35 times 40, but I think 280 they all go into. So I'm going to multiply everything by 280. 40 goes into 280 7 times, so I get 7d. 35 goes into 280 8 times, so I get plus 8d. 2 goes in there, 140 times 3 is 420. So I get 15d equals 420. Divide by 15, and that one I don't remember, so I'm going to have to pull out my calculator. 420 divided by 15, and it's 28 for d, which is the distance. Okay, this says subtract, so we don't have to do multiplying like that. It says just subtract 2 of these, so I've got 3 plus 2i minus 8. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, and negative 2 times negative I makes plus 2i. And now I combine like terms. These are the constants. So 3 minus 8 is negative 5. And 2i plus 2i is plus 4i. Now this is time, so I got to take 2i times 5. 2i times negative 3i, so that's negative 6i squared, I times I. And then I've got 3 times 5. And I've got 3 times a negative 3i, which is negative 9i. So I have 10i minus 9i, which is just 1i. And I have here I squared is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 6 is 6 plus 15, 21. If I'm going to solve by factoring, I want it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 7x from both sides. And I'm going to put it in order. So I'm going to go 5x squared minus 7x plus 2 equals 0. I'm going to line up 0 and negative 7 on my strips of paper, and I got to get 10. So if I go up with this one, this would be 1, and so this would have to go to negative 8 to still add to be negative 7, and 2 and negative 9. But if I multiply these, I'm going to get negative numbers, and I want positive numbers, so I need to go the other way, minus 1 and minus 6, minus 2 and minus 5, and there they multiply to be positive 10. So I have x minus 2 and x minus 5. But I need 5x squared, and so that's from these two, so I'm going to make this a 1 and put the 5 here. So I have 5x minus 2 and x minus 1, and I set these are multiplying to be 0, and it has to be 0 or you can't do this method. If I got two numbers that multiply to be 0, either this one is 0 or this one is 0. So if I add 2, I get 5x equals 2, divide by 5, and x equals 2/5. Or add 1 to both sides, and I get x equal 1. There's the two answers for this one. Quadratic formula. You still need to have it equal to 0. I like to leave the x squared positive, so I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. And I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides to make it equal to 0. Need that first to do the quadratic formula. If I do that, a is 2, b is negative 5, and c is negative 1. Now, if you subtracted the 2x squared, it would be a negative 2 plus 5 and plus 1. So it'll come out with the same answer, but I'm going to do it this way. And the quadratic formula says, use the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4a times c all over 2 times a, both parts over 2a. So the opposite of b, the negative of b, the negative of negative 5 is 5. Several of you just threw away the plus or minus. No, it is plus or minus. That's 5 plus whatever and 5 minus whatever. There's two sets of answers. Square root b squared. Negative 5 times negative 5 is plus 25. A negative times a positive times a negative will be a positive. I think about the signs first. Negative 4 times a positive times a negative. Negative times negative is positive. Now I think 4 times 2 is 8 times 1 is 8 over 2 times a, and a is 2, so that's 4. And this would have been fine for the answers, or you could write 5 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4, or you could write 5 plus the square root of 33 over 4, and 5 minus square root of 33 over 4, or you could write 5/4 plus square root of 33 over 4, and 5/4 minus the square root of 33 over 4. So there's two answers, or those two answers, or the two answers put together. Any of those. Several people had trouble with 14. We're trying to solve for x, so we're unwrapping. It says square it, add 100, take the cube root, and multiply by 3, in that order. To unwrap, you do everything opposite, undo it. So The last thing was multiply by 3, so I divide by 3. The opposite of cube root is to cube. So I'm going to take both sides to the third power, and I get x squared plus 100 equals 125. Subtract 100 from both sides. X squared equals 25. Many of you got to there, and then you said the opposite of squaring is square root, and you said x is 5 and not plus or minus 5. There are 2 square roots. So x is either plus or minus 5. This is in between notation. X is bigger than negative 3. So if I were looking at the number line, we'd start at negative 3, equal to it, and bigger. So we can start at the left side of negative 3, including negative 3. And then we got to go up to 9 and not include it. So over here, we would say, oh, well, these are 2 separate pieces, so we're going to have to union them together. These answers or these answers. These answers are from, and you go left to right, so it starts at negative infinity, works its way up to negative 3, and since it's an open circle, it means it's not included, so it's a parenthesis. And then it starts at 0, including the 0. It's a solid dot. And it goes all the way to positive infinity. And we never include the infinities. This one. So we add 6 to both sides. We divide by 4, and we get x is greater than or equal to 2. And that's an answer, or you could do interval notation. Starts at 2 and goes to infinity. Now, if you have absolute value less than or equal something, the numbers in here can be like 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, whatever this number works out to be, the whole thing. But they couldn't go too far negative. Negative 5, the absolute of negative 5 would be plus 5, and it wouldn't be less than there. So if you ever have an absolute value that's supposed to be less than a number, it's got the stuff here, the 3x minus 2, the number that's inside, has to be smaller, and in this case equal to 4, or it can't go too far negative because it'd be too big, so it has to be greater than negative 4. So to solve this, we add 2 to both sides, or to all 3 places, so that becomes negative 2. I'm adding 2 here. Adding 2 here gets rid of that. Add 2 here, I get 6. I'm going to divide by 3, and I'm dividing by 3, so I don't have to flip the signs. So I get negative 2/3 is less than or equal the numbers that I can use in here. And they have to be less than, if I'm dividing this by 3, I get 2. Or an interval notation, we can use from negative 2/3 up to 2, including on each side. Either of those would have worked.